All right, guys, welcome to the show. Today in the show, I have Alan Levy. He actually is the host and co-owner of a website called blogtalkradio.com. It's one of the biggest podcast directories in the world. And welcome to the show, Alan.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
So, do you want to share your story and just talk a little bit about how Blog Talk Radio got started?
Yeah, sure. So Blog Talk Radio, blogtalkradio.com is a platform that enables anyone to create a live streamed radio show online, as well as podcast. And so there's parts to that process. One's enabling a live interactive radio show whenever you'd like to do it. All you need is a computer really to host it, and then it becomes that podcast. The company was started in 2007 when I created a blog for my father who had cancer. And I didn't know much about social media, didn't know anything about blogging, but I was in the telecommunications business, and I kept seeing the words "join the conversation" on these blogs that I had been checking out as a result of his illness, and I kept seeing I couldn't hear any conversations. So we built some technology that now has been really scaled that hosts these radio shows, and they're live and interactive. You could take callers, and then they're recorded, and as you mentioned, they're a podcast. So we've hosted over 2.5 million of these podcasts, and on a given month, we'll host 45 to 50,000 podcasts.
Right. Now, I know just talking before, you're basically, your system is sort of supplemental to iTunes.
Correct. We're very complementary to iTunes. So iTunes, I view iTunes as a distribution platform, much like I would you think about YouTube as a video distribution platform. iTunes is a audio distribution platform, and there's many distribution platforms like TuneIn, Stitcher, and the like. Blog Talk Radio enables people to create podcasts very easily. So that's really the fundamental difference as to how we're different to iTunes, of course.
Right. Now, how do you guys look at in terms of these other companies that actually do podcast hosting where you can also, publish to iTunes? I know one of the big ones, for example, is Libsyn.com. How would you guys compare to a Libsyn type service?
Right. So again, they're also, they're storing your data. They're pushing out the podcast to iTunes and elsewhere, RSS feeds. What we're doing is we're the enabling of the podcast. We built a studio in the browser that people can access, and it's live, and you can take callers and have questions and so on, and then it's recorded, and then it becomes to be like what Libsyn would be. We store the data, we index the data, the content, and then we push the content. So again, they're not enabling the conversation, Libsyn. They're more helping to monetize, and they're publishing these podcasts.
Okay, so you guys are more like the all-around platform is basically where it's the big difference is.
Right, totally. Yeah. So like with YouTube is you can create a video and upload a video in many ways through your iPhone, through webcams, through cameras or video cameras. Think about us in terms of podcasts. If you want to do a live, number one, or if you want to have it interactive where you can take questions, there's very few platforms that enable that. We're one of the few platforms that do enable that to happen.
Right. Now, I know you guys offer obviously a free service as well as you have paid services as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about the differences you have in those services?
Sure. So we have a free platform that allows you to broadcast up to a half hour a day. You cannot be broadcasting during the primetime hours when most people do it, largely because that's when they're home. Many of the hosts come in on free. They play around with the platform. They get acclimated with the tools, and the tools. There's many more advanced features in our premium packages. So, for example, the ability to screen callers is included in our premium packages. The ability to use Skype as a source for audio as opposed to phone is also included in the package. There's other feature sets that are allowed at various levels in terms of advertising. So if you visit Blog Talk Radio, you'll see the differences between the two platforms.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know, so you guys really have kind of created this mass platform where people can literally get started and do everything from start to finish, and they wouldn't need to do a lot of the complicated setup that's needed with some of these other platforms.
Yeah, I mean, many of them aren't even platforms, right? Just to create a podcast is difficult, and
Yeah.
it's gotten somewhat easier with the iPhone app or a SoundCloud app. But again, it's a monotone. It's a one-way, generally one-way conversation, unless you're remote at a conference and you're sitting there with your iPhone next to someone you want to interview. But if you want to interview someone on the phone and you want an MP3 to be delivered right after that, we've taken care of the whole solution for you, as well as the iTunes integration. So as soon as you're recording this event on Blog Talk Radio and hosting it live, it then is pushed to iTunes, which is helpful for the host. As you say, it's really an all-in-one solution.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, in terms of like when you got started, I'm curious to kind of hear how you were able to sort of grow the platform. I mean, I still feel like it seems like you guys are a little bit unique in this space. I know there's a few other competitors that are, doing similar things, but I haven't looked at all of them. But where do you kind of feel like you guys shine versus, maybe some other folks that have attempted to copy this model?
Yeah, so the reason why, I mean, there are very few players in the space, and no one is in it, and in large part because you need to have the bridges around technology available, and we do. That's what we've built. So we've scaled these solutions to the point where we host in the evening at 300 simultaneous radio shows. We have the ability to scale it much further based on what's needed. So, no one, I mean, that's our background. So
Yeah.
there's a real technological issue and challenge vis-a-vis this. And we've also integrated, so we have a patent on this technology, and the patent actually is the integration of the telephony bridge in a stream. So as I mentioned earlier, we could stream an event with thousands of people. We had Obama on at a couple of years ago. We had 60,000 live streams. And so this could really scale both in terms of live streamed audience as well as podcasts.
Right, so that's sort of like a more of an audio-based like webinar in a sense, where you could really get a mass audience listening on one call.
That's correct. Exactly.
Yeah, I know that's been a huge limitation for some of these other platforms where you hit 1,000 callers and then you're done.
Yeah, so we have another platform here. There's two companies that we run. One is called Blog Talk Radio, and the other one is Cinchcast. And that Cinchcast is an enterprise conferencing platform that can scale to thousands, and then even tens of thousands we can stream on a web page. So we always felt that the streaming was important because people want to participate passively. They don't need to be on a phone. So that's another nuance in particular of the platform that we've seen compelling.
Yeah.
But the big issue, though, really, to me, is the engagement. When you're having a conversation, like we're having a conversation now about podcasting, I think it's much more interesting when there's two people talking to one another, or even if we took callers and people pose questions to me or to you.
Yeah.
That's what really makes it. That's talk radio, right? I mean, that's what I loved about talk radio, and that's really what isn't happening in podcasting generally. It just doesn't exist.
Right, yeah, I know that there's a lot of folks, I listen to a few podcasts where they sort of either do themselves talking about a particular topic or they do interviews, and then maybe some people might do a mix of a little bit of both where they do some solo shows and like their primary focus might be interviews.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what the audience is really interested in. And the interactive nature of it. But what's great is that podcasting generally is starting to really expand and do nicely.
Yeah, no, I know. Before we started, we had mentioned that we'd sort of talk about the future of podcasting. I mean, where do you see the company in say a year or 2 or 3 years?
Well, I think what's happening is that the podcast concept is really taking off and broadening, and part of it has to do with the audio on mobile. Mobile's really scaled, of course, and platforms like Pandora and Spotify have led the charge in terms of music streaming and next-gen radio. But talk hasn't really evolved. So I think more and more companies are going to get invested in the space, build different platforms. I think it's just very good in general for the entire kind of ecosystem. I think one of the big areas that really needs to develop, though, is the monetization and the metrics and the accounting for that and scaling the monetization.
Yeah.
it's really at a very nascent stage, and until that gets sorted, probably by like a big player like a Yahoo or Google, which Google tried a couple of years ago, you're not going to see. I think it's going to be a somewhat limiting factor into the evolution of the space.
Right. Now, I don't know if you, I haven't particularly used your platform yet. I might check out the free version myself, honestly, now after, I've known about it, but I've actually been using, lately, I've been using archive.org, which I can host my shows for free until my audience is big enough that I might need to start looking at, streaming hosts where I'm going to need that extra bandwidth. But
Yeah, sure.
what I wanted to ask was, I lost my train of thought. What I was going to ask was, in terms of, are you guys looking to maybe integrate something where you're going to allow bloggers, maybe who are running under these, content management systems like WordPress, to, maybe integrate all into your system with people who are running blogs as well and want that, because I know a lot of people, for example, are using the PowerPress plugin, which is a Burberry based plugin, and then they'll integrate that into their blog, and then they can tie everything together with a blog post and then publish their podcast not only out on iTunes but have a blog post on their their primary website about that particular blog.
Right. So the way we've been doing it now, and it's definitely a good point, and one of the the challenges around that are, of course, where do you establish these plugins and manage them? And right now, we've really focused on Facebook Open Graph, so we're fully integrated into Facebook Open Graph. We have a lot of different instances, like you can see when people you follow create a show, listen to a show, comment on a show, and of that nature. We're also working with large blogging platforms. Like one of them is SB Nation. You may be familiar with them. They're a large sports blogging platform. They have about 310 blogs. And
Wow.
SB Nation is now, they have a radio network on Blog Talk Radio where we're aggregating shows for them in their own channel. So we kind of look at ourselves as a new medium almost, as this audio space, and we're scaling audiences, which will enable us to get more advertising dollars and be able to share that with our hosts. So we're kind of moving. I mean, the WordPress is a great idea, but I'm not quite sure what the monetization path is for that model.
Right. You mean in terms of from you guys being able to really build upon that in a bigger way.
Correct, and give the technology away for nothing, and someone's got to pay the bills of the engineers, and at the end of the day, these are complicated technologies, and a lot of people take them for granted. I mean, Blog Talk Radio itself is an incredibly complicated set of technologies, and that's really why there's no one else in the space.
Right.
And that's largely due to the complexity.
Now, I know I think we sort of went off track a little bit, but I was going to ask a little bit about how you've kind of grown your platform. Like when starting out, did it take a while to really start getting people to sign up and start creating their podcasts over on your platform? Like, how did you go about really getting yourself out there and becoming as big as you are today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of hard work and heavy lifting. When we launched, again, no one knew who we were. I didn't come from the media space. I didn't come from the web space. So, we didn't have the advantages of network. We weren't financed by VCs. Really what was helpful is that our hosts were on the platform and they were hosting radio shows. And they would invite their friends, and their friends would be like, hey, wait a minute, I could do a show. And that's how it really broadened. And then, of course, over the years, we had a lot of high-profile hosts come through here, the Pentagon, Department of Defense, and universities, and educators, and celebrities of the like. So we've had a tremendous amount of content run through, and just it's organically grown, and that's how these things work. The space itself is developed, is really accelerating now. Now you're seeing more and more media companies looking to get into podcasting as a platform. And that's exciting, because where we can enable that, and we could, that we can be broadcasting their content on our platform. So, the space is really picking up. I mean, it's taken a while for podcasting to get there, but I think you see really interest in it continue to increase. over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know that in my particular space, obviously I'm sort of more in like a marketing niche, and a lot of the marketers that seem to be, kind of doing these podcasts, everybody talks about how it's just that extra avenue of bringing kind of an audience to your brand, where I'll see a lot of marketing blogs starting up these podcasts, and they just focus on their particular niche, whatever it is that they're, doing on their blog.
Right. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, so that's what I mean. It's an additional data point. It's additional way to reach your audience. And we have a lot of brands on Blog Talk Radio that are on Blog Talk, like Sears, Craftsman Tools hosts a DIY radio show, Do It Yourself. Intel has been on for a few years. Johnson & Johnson, and more and more. This is just another venue, another platform that gives the brands an opportunity, and individuals, of course, to engage with their audiences. And I think it's only at the start. It's going to get much, much bigger.
Right. Now, in terms of growth, have you seen, like, over the past year, like, has it kind of blown up much more than when it was a year or two, 2 years ago, in terms of how many people are actually signing up and creating their own shows and, things like that?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a rapid growth in users and hosts and content creators and audience sizes. And more distribution platforms. That's the other thing that's happening here. You've got, originally it was iTunes, and then TuneIn has really expanded. And then you've got apps like Swell and different with Stitcher and other ones that are coming. So the more distribution platforms there are, they're all seeking content. And Blog Talk Radio is this content farm. And like I said, we create 45,000 radio shows a month. So there's a tremendous amount of content running through here. And as there's more available distribution platforms of the content, it really helps everyone involved, the hosts and our overall platform scales.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in terms of, I was curious, in terms of free users, I mean, is the ratio of, obviously I'm sure you have many more free users being that it's free, but do you find that a lot of people are kind of coming into the platform and then eventually deciding that they want to scale up and, really get bigger into their business and bigger into their podcasts and go for the, subscription-based model? Yeah,
definitely. I mean, that's what we have free is leading to the premium, and it's a good natural evolution for these folks as they get acclimated with the platform. They're testing it out and trying it. It's kind of like riding a bike. You look at a bike and you don't know what it is, but when you get on the bike, you fall a couple of times, but then once you get on, you know how to ride, and we help the bicyclists kind of get to where they want to go. And so then they come on and they'll focus on the premium, and we're really seeing it help build their brand in many ways. The individuals interviewing experts, they're interviewing celebrities, they're interviewing famous authors. When you have your own radio show, and while they are podcasts, it's nice to say someone, hey, would you like to be on my radio show? And we've always seen since the very early days that people, celebrities and famous people, they all want that time in the sun, that 15-minute, they all want exposure, and that's what this platform does for people.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, that's what I love about doing interviews in general, because I've been able to reach out and connect with some people that I never would have really ever thought to be sitting down with people that are talking every week with someone who might be a six-figure earner or $1 million earner, someone people that I just normally wouldn't have ever really thought to be chatting with, and it's as simple as just reaching out and being able to ask the questions and talk a little bit about how they got started and where they came to be.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. I mean, it was funny when, about 6 months after we launched the platform, maybe a few months, there was a Duncan Hunter. I don't know if you recall his name, but he was running for Republican president, and he's a Reagan Republican, and he's from San Diego. And we must have two people in the company at the time. It was in the beginning of 2007. We had launched the platform. And the lady that was working with me at the time said, I saw that Duncan Hunter was running for president, and it was on a Friday, and she said, let me call over there. Why don't we interview him? And first initial thought was, well, who we, and this and that, and sure enough, the following day, 10:30 in the morning, we spoke, and he was on my radio show. So, because I had a platform, I was able to interview a presidential candidate, and that was a very telling thing for me in terms of our hosts continue to this day get a who's who of who's coming through, and we're not really talking about famous, Piers Morgans or Larry Kings. We're talking
Yeah.
about individuals that have a platform and a voice.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what it's all about, and I mean I figured for me just take action and stay consistent, and the more people I've been able to reach out to, and using platforms like I know we sort of connected through helpareporter.com, aka Harrow, and that sort of opened up a whole new door of opportunities for me, finding all sorts of different people in different niches. I found it funny because I actually paid on a forum to advertise and put out and say, hey, I'm looking for people that have had success, and I don't think I got a single inquiry, and here I am using a platform like Harrow, and I've got someone like yourself, which I never really would have thought, oh, I should go reach out to this host of one of the most massive podcast directories out there.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. That's what I love about the web today, and this come like breaking down all the barriers and all the doors. I mean, it's because it's important for get your message out, and then it's important for these messages to be expanded upon and pushed out by you and others that are out there each day talking about interesting topics. So
yeah, for sure. All right. Well, I know we're short for time for today. I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to share. I know for anyone listening, I know we've mentioned it several times, but you can head over to blogtalkradio.com, and it's a massive podcast directory. If you've been thinking about podcasting, it's definitely a great platform to check out. I'm probably even going to sign up for myself just to kind of see what opportunities are within the platform versus what I'm using right now.
That's great. I appreciate it, John. No, I think we covered it. It was really nice meeting you, and thanks for checking out Blog Talk Radio, and thanks for recommending it to your audience.
Yep. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Okay. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.